Hello again and welcome to episode 3 of A Yank on the Footy. I'm Craig Wessels from Sandusky, Ohio, and I'm glad that you're listening. For those of you who've listened to the first few episodes, I want to thank you for coming back again, and I think that you're in for a treat. Those of you who are new to the podcast, I am so glad that you are here, and you picked a good one. Don't forget that while you can find this podcast at ayankonthefooty.podbean.com, you can also find it on your favorite podcast provider, including Apple, Google, Spotify, and TuneIn. After you've listened, I would love for you to consider giving me a review on the podcast host that you're using. It lets me know what I need to work on, what I'm doing well, and it lets the podcast host know that you think of the show as well. Don't forget you can also reach me at ayankonthefooty@gmail.com and on Twitter at yank_on, as well as on Facebook and Instagram at A Yank on the Footy. When I first dove headlong into becoming a footy fan and ultimately a Cats supporter, I know some of you may still be getting over that, there were countless people that welcomed me with open arms and helped me get up to speed on the nuances of the game to really understand what was going on, what I was seeing. There were others that helped me to learn about the rivalries and how to give fans of the other teams a hard time if that's what I chose to do. I like to embrace the game from an openness that I don't have the baseline of growing up as a supporter of a specific club, so that not liking another team simply because that's been a rival for 50 years for me, that doesn't impact me. But there were some people that helped me out with learning about that sort of thing, okay? And I wanted to take a moment at the beginning of this episode to tip my cap in respect to someone who's had a couple of really difficult weeks, and they've been quite frankly unimaginable. And I'd like to tip my cap to Travis Milestone and his family. Now, Travis and his family lost their home in Gippsland to the horrific bushfires very recently. And while I can't be there to shake his hand or give him a hug, if he'd let me, one thing I can do is dedicate this episode to Travis and to his family. And Travis, I am so very sorry for what you and your family have had to endure. I hope that you can find an even small amount of solace and enjoyment in this episode. We're all thinking about you, and that goes out as well to everyone who has been impacted by these horrific fires. This episode was my first foray into conducting an interview as part of my podcast, and that's going to very soon become evident. My guest and I spent quite a bit of time getting our conversation app to work properly. Now, I have had it working properly, and it works fantastically well, but we had a couple of small glitches, and, well, we've had to work around those a little bit. I wanted to test it out with my guest before the interview because, let's be honest, I'm in Ohio, and he's in Queensland, and I wasn't sure that it was going to work properly. And I was hoping that it would, so I wanted to try it out. And leading up to the interview we're going to do, we traded several emails and messages. I put together a series of questions that I wanted to address, letting him know where I was going to go with the interview. And he gave me some feedback as well. Well, we finally got the interview software working properly. And our practice session that we were going to do last evening, now I'm recording this on Saturday, the 4th of January, so Friday evening here in Ohio, we were going to do our practice session, and it quickly turned into the actual interview. Now, my guest for this episode has a name that's going to make any of you who are longtime VFL and AFL fans, especially Cat fans, sit up and take notice. This is a name that is synonymous with Geelong. He's originally from Pernem, West Victoria, and for the last 20 years or so has resided in Mackay, Queensland. I would like to welcome Mr. Chris Hickey, the second cousin of Geelong legend Reg Hickey, to the podcast. Now, after I've said that, we have to realize that I did not end up giving Chris a proper introduction during our practice session. We pretty much just dove right in. Okay, so what I'm airing is more of an introductory discussion, and like I said, we just jumped right into the conversation, and I hope that you enjoy it. I would like to welcome Chris Hickey to the podcast. Chris is a lifelong Cats fan, and is the second cousin of Cats legend, Reg Hickey. All right, so we are recording now. So hopefully you can still hear me.
Yeah, clear as a bell.
Terrific. To me, that's amazing that technology exists.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, I mean,
that's right.
15,000 kilometers away. And it's,
clear as that.
Yeah, exactly. So, in the email that I sent to you, were some of the types of things that I wanted to ask as far as, about Reg. It is Reg, right? It is Reg.
Reg Joseph Hickey, he's full name. Yeah. Regiment, actually. His full name's Regiment. Reginald. It sounds like a military, doesn't it? But he might have been a military too, mate. I don't think you would have gone the wrong side of him. I think he's the sort of bloke that you do things this way, but a good man, had the team spirit behind him, knew what to do on the right time, and a true leader. I think that would be Reg Joseph Hickey. When I listen to the coaches now, I look at them and I think of what would Reg do. You just naturally think that way. But I watch a match and I can pick what they need to do, and not everyone can do that. So maybe and I'm so really passionate Geelong. It's like, it's unbelievable. It's before I knew who Reg was. It has to be something there. I didn't even know I was born at Geelong because we'd moved from there. So there's something all behind it. It's so strong with me. It's like a war. When they play, it's like you're going into war. So that's not the ordinary, right. Let's face it, this is really not just ordinary stuff. And the battles, like, say, the Geelong Hawthorn matches, mate, I'd be praying my backside off and only listening to the match, but it was like, you think you're going to have a heart attack, mate, fair dinkum, about 10 times, because the game was that close. And we were trying to get it out of defence in the back line. He'd be saying, like, for Scarlett now that's playing, come on, Scarlett, kick my bloody. He'd be saying stuff like this, swear it away, because you're so wound up and you're praying at the same time. Just get the ball out of the back line, because they're a pretty good side, Hawthorn, and they always are. They'll always be a good side. And the fierce rivals. And when we had 10 battles against them, we won 10 times in a row. So you can imagine how many times I was praying in that match and how wound up you could be in those 10 battles. Unbelievable. Yeah. But that's what it's all about. That's what sport's about. And that's what it's all about. That's rivalry. That's a lot of things. But, the different people that barrack for different sides, that's what it's all about. That's me, and that's how I understand it. And, you've got now you're right. You go. Yeah.
Like I said, I hopefully we're going to go over all of these things tomorrow, and I'm going to go back and listen to some of the stuff you're talking about tonight, because you're giving some great
I
dialogue here.
I reckon I'd fill you up don't know how long, because I love me AFL, but I'm mad Geelong too. But I'm that's just the way I am. I'm wired that way. So, and I go over a lot of things over Geelong, just this side, what's going on with them. And that's what I do so much, spend a lot of time on. And mate, if they do what I say, we win. So it's just, the unfortunate part is that, the coaches coach the way they coach these days. And, with the Geelong mayhem now, it gives something like to hear what other people are saying. So before that, all I had was Twitter, and they didn't say a lot on Twitter. So I've had to pull my head a little bit in with Geelong mayhem, because I started to go and say this and this, and they'll pick on you. They'll get into you. But that's all right. We all had a bit of a go. We all ganged up on it. But that's the way it works. It's to me, that's good, because it's a following. It's like a sort of a family sort of thing. Like, we all support the one side. So that's great. Absolutely. That's terrific. And I've never had that. I've never had that in a full season. So that gives you something more than, like, the time I would spend on Geelong you would surprise you. Maybe a lot what you spend on with your code, or you're so intrigued with AFL. It is a great game. And when you say things like, when you put that broadcast across, when I experienced it up here and didn't have AFL, that started to burr inside me, like those words when you say that song, when it says about what a great game is. That's what you realise. This is a bloke that's born and bred with it, played it, since a school kid, stuff like that, went to another state and then witnessed, it's almost like solitary confinement or so. Like you might as well be locked up because they wouldn't know any different here. They only understand their code, and they call it aerial ping pong. That's what I call it, and that's really irritating. But
well, that's
how they see.
You know, that's a pretty good description there. I didn't even think about the aerial ping pong because
it's not to us because that's irritating. But anyway, to other people, okay. You move the ball, but they look at it like they think we're sissies, mate. The games are not for sissies. And that's how they look at it. See, so it's an experience at a time. And if I didn't have my AFL to watch now, and I watch a lot on the phone, that's even better than having a TV. You can walk around with it and watch any game. That's fantastic. As long as they got their connections right, it's fantastic. I experienced how lost I was. It just took away all my identity. I honestly, in a grand final week here, you wouldn't know any difference. In Victoria, like it's just it's madness. No, anywhere, and I've only been brought up in small towns. Not in the big smoke really of Melbourne, stuff like that. I've only been brought up around in small towns, but that's big enough. They're fanatical. We're fanatical. We don't realise how fanatical we are until you move away out of your comfort zone and then see another walk of life. But that's all right. That's a learning experience. It's fine.
Absolutely. What you have said right there, I'm glad I'm recording this now because some of that right there I'm probably going to include in what ends up becoming this final episode here. That's been terrific so far.
Oh, mate, when I listened to what you first said the other night, I got a lot out of what you said when I listened to what you said and stuff, and actually I enjoyed that. So we have a different podcast on the Geelong one. They have Lingy and blokes like that. He could listen to this and say, I even got into him and said, look, say it as it is because they're promoting us too good, winning all these games last year. And I said, hey, just, they all get carried away. I don't know if you ever listened to it, but I ripped into Lingy on his thing and said, just say it as it is. I followed you. I barracked for you. And then he wouldn't mention my name or stuff, but I watched his next podcast. It was excellent. He really got down to the business side of it because I said, mate, I listened to you on Channel 7. You're not like that. Just do the same thing. They get a bit carried away on it. But anyway, that's everyone to their own. And you won't get mentioned, you pulled him up and stuff like that. But I did. I know I did. And, I said, it was, I said, I can't take you seriously what you're doing because I followed you. We followed you. We know when you get on that thing, you're a different person. Then you're with your reporter, and then you have Tui, the bloke, and they're just crazy when they get together. They were getting so far ahead of themselves, and Geelong do a little bit. That's the thing with them. Geelong are a funny side to barrack for, although I better be careful what I say. There's probably Geelong supporters listening say, who's that bloody bloke? So I better rate it in a little bit, but they are an interesting bunch, and like I barracked from when they weren't such a strong side, and they were the hard times. So I barracked from when they've been really low. I barracked from in all their losing grand finals, and I didn't want them to get into a grand final again if they're going to get flogged because that's why it hurts so much. It just hurts you. Like if they lose one week, that hurts me. That's what it means. It means so much. That means so much to me. And that's not uncommon, I'd say, to a lot of Geelong supporters that listen to it. They're similar, but you're not the same. You're a grumpy sort of a person. You're sort of like you're a different person. It hurts you, You're a grumpy person walking around. Why didn't we win? Should have done this, should have done that. You don't feel. Even with the coach that now, too, when he has press conferences and you pick up what he's saying, you don't like what he says. Oh, it doesn't sit with you, and you go over and you go, what was he on about? Why did he say that? And that's where I feel you've got to be connected. Even the coach, I don't think he realises he doesn't hit a lot of social media. He should listen to the Geelong Main because I think they're not bad. They're what I'm saying to them. We all think pretty much the same. Different point, that's fine. But he should connect to that because I think he'd get a lot of scope to what a lot of Geelong supporters actually think. And I think that's important, but I'm saying it from as a supporter. He talks when he talks as a coach, and it loses you what he says. He looks like a dickhead, mate, when he talks. But anyway, I'll curb my tongue what I have to say. Well, and a lot of people on the Geelong Main agree. They can't stand Scotty. I don't. And even a bloke, Robbo, that does that Robbo 360, he even wrote an article after that first final and said, why? I even went in to defend him after that first final. And then he couldn't even work out the bloody weather, mate. Look, I can work out the weather from here. I can tell him the steps, what you do. And honestly, I get it pretty right, Craig, because I have to do a lot of stuff here with cyclones and all that sort of stuff. And honestly, if you do follow that, you get a pretty. I have to follow cricket. I follow cricket, any footy, all that, different states. So I can tell you what to follow. I can tell Chris Scott, mate, if you don't know how to follow the weather properly, I'll tell you the steps, brother. Simple as that. Honestly, I know it sounds like I'm being a smart ass, but he's even said socially, I'm hopeless at this. They got the first final wrong, mate. They didn't know. They thought it's going to be thunderstorms down. It didn't play till the Friday. The time the game started, it didn't rain 1 inch. I mean, the ground would have had over the week, so they didn't play their ruckman. So we're looking and going, what the hell's going on here? You know,
I was just going to say that.
The whole Geelong Bay, we're talking about it for about a month or so, and we're all still wild about it, you know. So I ended up still defending him then and saying, look, you know, there's 8 people that make a decision. But anyway, that's footy. But really, if you're a professional coach, you've got to be able to work simple things like that out, because I can tell him what to do. I can tell honestly, and it's very consistent when I do follow, Craig, the weather map, and it does give you percentages and stuff. And I follow it because I have to do all different things. It is very, very accurate. So it might sound like, oh, listen to this bloke, but it is true. It is. If he followed it, he would have got that. And they're very important things to get right. Like, if you don't get that weather right and everything right in finals, well, you'll be found out. Simple as that.
Well,
Reg
and it also
got it right, mate. That's all I'd say.
It also would have helped if Tom Hawkins had kept his elbows to himself as well.
Oh yeah. Well, the one I thought with that one was I didn't see the footage where they didn't show him like when he's coming across that bloke. So when I learned that the other bloke actually held his arm back, I said, well, you know, fair enough. What would you? But then again, I understand the game and the occasion, all that. The bloke did hold him back. No, this wasn't really broad. It held his arm back. He wasn't actually a Geelong boy. Those blokes went to school together, Craig. So
they did. I didn't realize that. He was
holding his arm back. Yeah, he's holding his arm back. And Tommy's a pretty powerful brute of a fella. So I don't think he knows his own force. If he hits you hard, if he had the temperament of a brute, he'd kill you, that bloke, you know. But he's not. He's like I've got to be careful what I say. but he's a strong. He's a really strong, you know, look at the size of him. If he had a bad attitude, God, he'd kill someone, mate. But he has it. And that's what I was trying to say to people, and they all banged in on him and all that. And I didn't realise his arm was held back. And I didn't see the vision. But we all know he shouldn't have done it. And then, everyone blamed him and all this. And there's still some blaming all this. But it shouldn't come back to one bloke anyway. But anyway, this is what we do. That's footy, isn't it? So,
yeah.
You know.
Yeah, in that case, you have to look at the fact. You have to look at the fact that Richmond, you know, they were decimated by injuries all year, and they got healthy at the right time. They were
and the biggest one was the biggest one with them. The story now is like, will they be stronger with Rance? And now Rance has gone back to his religion, and now his wife's done the flute, done the coot too. So. I said this when I watched him, and I said when he won in 2007, and I listened to him. I said, that bloke, he could be here, he could be not. I said, have a listen to him. He's that sort of fella. And look what's happened. Now he's gone back to his 7, whatever it is. And now his missus has gone the coot too. So, you know, the thing was, were they going to be a stronger side coming into 2020 with a Rance, because they adapted without him? And good on them, you know, good on them to do that. I thought when Geelong played them, we had the wrong bloke playing on Big Lynchy. It should have been the bloke that's size which is played back all year, which is Blitz.
Yeah.
As soon as College Yankee misjudged the mark, I said it's the wrong matchup. That's me brain said that, but I was too focused on the game. And usually I watch that and say switching, but my head said switch, put a switch. So they put Taylor to him, but you can't stop. If a ball is kicked, Craig, out of the centre and it's perfectly put to your chest, there's not much anyone can do about it. If you've got great midfielders like Dusty when he gets loose and stuff like that. But the right matchup was, I'd say, the bloke I just said, Blitz. They played all year. They're playing him bloody wing, mate. They love to play Blitz Geelong. They think he can play him anywhere because he used to be a steeplechaser, like could have played Olympics. And that's fantastic. My opinion is he can clock up a lot of Ks, but if he doesn't hurt you in playing, you're in fantasy world about what he can do. If he finds his spot down back, leave him there. You know who suggested that? Matthew Scarlett suggested to him. They tried it through the ruck in an off game against It worked because he used to play ruck. He played ruck one of the first years. He won their best and fairest. He got hurt playing ruck too because he didn't know how to play ruck.
Didn't they have him play ruck in the game that they sat Reece Stanley when they thought the weather was going to be bad?
Yeah, that's right.
If I'm not mistaken. They moved Blitz down there for that.
Yeah. But in the game against West Coast, they still had him wing. That's right. And in the Richmond one, he should have been the matchup and playing back. I think with the Collingwood one, they thought it was going to be wet, so they thought we'd play small. And they thought bring Menengola in. But Menengola was out of form. I listened to the game the week before. They got beaten in the reserves. He couldn't get a touch. He's just come back from injury. All due respects to the bloke. He's out of form. Just come back. Give him time. They're thinking play small. You got to look at how they thought. What irritates me a little bit about Geelong coaching staff is they'd sit there and say, we know what we know. You don't. And that really irritated me because if you get it right, fair enough. If you don't, you've got to expect to get, a lot of criticism. You have to take the responsibility. That's how I look at it, Craig. Like, if you're that arrogant and you sit there and say, like Chris Scott says, oh, we know things you don't know. Well, okay. That sounds arrogant to say that too. If you say that and you get it wrong, you're going to get a lot of bloody things thrown at you.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe you don't know.
Want to really hurt you. You know what I mean?
Maybe you don't know as much as you think you do. Yep.
Yeah. Well, it comes across so arrogant, and you got even his. I know he goes on 3-6 with Robin. I don't want to get too caught up with this, but I'm not a big fan of that because I think a coach gets caught up with other coaches looking at them, and if they get playing very well, everyone looks at that side, and you tell them things. You don't realise what you're telling them. We've done it before. To me, I'm not a big fan of a coach going on a program like that, but that's only my opinion. A lot of people say, what are you talking about,
Well,
and I think you do give secrets away.
And you'd have to keep in mind, that might have ended up costing Alan Richardson his job because he was there every week with Chris Scott. But, the Saints were not very good.
Winning, I understand. I understand what you're saying. If they were winning, they'll probably be a different side. To me, Richo was a bit soft. He needs to be a bit harder, a bit of mongrel on him. To me, he's like, hello, boys, we'll have some scones and tea now, I'll just bring out the coffee and the tea. What do you think?
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you are enjoying my talk with Chris Hickey, lifelong Cats fan and second cousin of Cats legend Reg Hickey. Unfortunately, in the next segment, we had a little bit of a hiccup with our audio, so there were a couple of moments where the questions and the responses got a little bit out of sync. I decided to leave it this way because I think you can get the gist of what is being talked about in this segment. Again, I can't thank Chris enough for taking time to record and then re-record and, quite frankly, re-record some of the things that we were discussing during the course of our conversation this past weekend. It was great to talk to him. This is actually going to be part 1 of 2 episodes that I do with Chris, as we had so much information that I did not want to put it all into one single episode. So, ladies and gentlemen, without any further hesitation, I bring you the second part of the first episode with Chris Hickey. I hope you enjoy. There are some great stories coming up. Well, I appreciate you coming back online today. That's a huge help. There were a few things that we talked about in the second half of our conversation last night or yesterday morning that we need to kind of touch base on again today. Yeah. One of the things you were telling me, and I kind of want to go back to this story before we talk about your second cousin a little bit, but you were telling me about a nun that you had when you were in school when you were a child.
Yeah.
And her being a Collingwood fan.
Yeah, her name was Sister Adelbert. She was a bit of a battle axe, mate, to be straight down the line with you. She's very strict, black and white. There's nothing else except black and white, and that's the way it was. So everyone should say, who backs for Collingwood? So they all put their hands up. That's the way it went. But I didn't put my hand up, and a few others did either. So
And she said that she made the kids sing the Collingwood song whether they wanted to or not.
We played. We lost in might have been 75. I think. I don't want to. Don't quote me there. I know Neville Bruns missed a point. He kicked a point, and we lost by a point. They played. It was the grand final anyway to Richmond because they played Richmond next week. We had to sing the song, losing that preliminary final, up on the front of the only 30 pupils. Small school went to primary school. We had to sing the Collingwood, good old Collingwood forever. You know how humiliating that is. If you're a pretty staunch, or we were, it's quite humiliating. So what we had to do. So, and of course, as I said, my mate said the next week because Richmond got him. Kevin Bartlett got him with the old little hair bloke with kicked 8 goals, no hair, and he was on Stan Magro, gave him a bit of a run around. And well, looks like he's better sing the song. And I got a bit nervous when he said that because I thought, geez, I think about that, but I don't think I don't think I'd say that. I think walking on very, the ground there starting to get a little bit nervous, like not that I said it, but I thought I wouldn't say that if I was you. But anyway, I don't think they did sing it by memory.
Exactly.
She was just black and white, mate. I don't know how to describe her, but she was just black and white. They must have, as this the army is now, is like with the Magpie Army or the Richmond. She was like that. It was, I don't know how to describe it. That was way back then, so she wouldn't be alive now. But she was just so black and white. There was nothing else.
Well, that's how she ended up becoming a Pies fan then. It was a black and white issue for her.
And I'll tell you, you're a teacher, so you don't want to go. But as a teacher, if you got on the wrong side of her, you'd get into the pupils. She wouldn't talk to the parents. He'd get into you. So it was an interesting sort of, is this how you treat this? Can have a picked on me, but anyway, I don't want to go any further and talk about a brother like that. What he said to her, but that was a different story. We won't go down that path. But it's not about that. But
okay,
she was very strict, as they were in those days. But she was just black and white, like it was like there's nothing else, and everyone had to put up their hand. Who backs for Collingwood? So they all put their hand up, naturally.
That's what they call going along to getting along to get along.
Go off the flow, but
just go along with the flow. Yeah, exactly.
Or why should I? You know what I mean? Maybe I was stubborn. But,
exactly. Yeah.
And maybe that's the word, but something ingrained me to say I don't have to. But then the other side, maybe said, you better, but I'm saying, no, I'm not. So, there you go. So, yeah, no, she was, yeah.
Now, one of the other things we were going to be talking about was your second cousin, Reg. And, he played a long time ago. He passed away almost 50 years ago now. So people know the name, but they don't know necessarily a lot about him. And what do you think that the average footy fan in Australia and the novice fan in the United States should know about your cousin?
I think the record books are there, and as much of my journey with finding out who Reg was, that, the man was obviously an absolute freak, what he did, on and off the field, really. To go Leslie right into it, I can go Leslie into it. 35 years service to the club, but having a stand and all these things. I think, well, see, a lot of people wouldn't know who he is because he played back in that generation. That's the reality. And I think, because I'm related to him, I don't mind stepping out and saying, flying the flag or so for it. So basically, they wouldn't know who's Reg Hickey. And they look up the books, they go, oh, yeah. Or, for example, our current captain has just passed his games as captain. So that's taking all that time for someone to eclipse that. But he had, there's records after records with him. And the man was, he's obviously something else. As Bob Davis was asked who was the best in that era, he said Reg Hickey, But, obviously a great coach, very, I'd say, probably, strict with what he wanted to do, but, obviously could get along with people to what was required. And he was pretty handy, obviously, as known as a centre back or sentry in their era.
He's asked to coach Victoria, which they did State of Origin in, but, he declined, I think, because he couldn't get the players, or he wasn't allowed the players he wanted to coach. So, it goes on. He was runner-up in a Brownlow, it was third too. So, the records are there with him, and he mustn't have been too bad to have a stand after him, They just keep rolling. I'm feeling crazy. There's no BS. They just keep rolling on. I am intrigued, with him still to this day, because I might sound a bit biased, being naturally my father's and my father Con and his father were brothers, but so that connection there. So I'm a bit biased, but I still feel like, I want to put him out there. You know what I mean? Like it's. I know we're in 2020. I understand all that, but
exactly.
It would have been, of course, I would have loved to meet him and all that sort of stuff. Seriously, because I believe I follow Geelong, I really feel, I don't know whether it's me just saying it, but I'm so strongly with Geelong. I don't know whether I got a bit of Reg or something in me, but I watch the game and I'll sort of decide in the match what they need to do in the match, not after the match or that. Or I get vibes too before a match too, whether I think how they're going to go. Ask myself how they're going to go. Or I'm constantly asking them where's their weaknesses, all this sort of stuff. Stuff that not everyone can. Maybe I've got a little bit of that's come back through the genes. I don't know. But the thing is with two, I followed them that strongly over my journey. It must come from somewhere, and the ties with Geelong too, because I didn't even know I was born in Geelong. We'd left and gone down to Western Victoria, to Purnham, in a farming community there. So I had no recollection of Geelong. So, and it's so strong. Like, it's when they play, there's no messing around. Like, if they lose, it's like, it takes so long. It's like you're cursing, swearing and all that. And, I must admit, I could be asked questions about, what I think about the coaching and stuff. And it's quite interesting what you would get. But, you've only got a limited time, what you're asking and stuff like that. But, yeah, it's quite interesting what you probably would get from me, but when if you watch a game,
exactly,
and I sat beside you on that, and I could pick things out, I think you'd be surprised what, and I've even done it with commentators, and I'm in front of them, so there must be something there with the old Reggie. I mean, Reggie's got a bit of genes in me. I don't know, but it's there and it's strong, and it'll be there to the day I die, mate. I reckon too, because. I'm half 50. I'm 50 now, so
there has to be
whatever's going to go on from there. But
yeah,
the Geelong journey, it's very strong, and it's I don't know. It's just what it is. It's real. It's fair dinkum. There's no messing about. It's
right.
And it's all right to criticise them and stuff. That's fine. I mean, that's what it's about. I mean. You want the best side. You want best what's going on. That's healthy as far as I'm concerned. You've got to have healthy debate as far as I'm concerned. Some people don't like criticising stuff like that, but that's a lot of rubbish as far as I'm concerned. You have to if you want to get the best side or pick the best side, it comes down to judgment too. So when coaches pick, their players and stuff, or they make decisions, that's a judgment call, and that's an important one. So it's an interesting one, and that's what you follow very closely, like a recent coach right now. It's been there for 10 years. Chris Scott.
You had mentioned Bob Davis before, and you had started to touch on a story about him at practice one day that kind of gave an indication of what kind of a coach Reg was, and I thought that was a pretty humorous story. If you could share that as well, that would be terrific.
To their recent premiership, I think it was 2007, he witnessed that one. So, but basically the story goes, and he told the story, it's probably on somewhere, you would find it somewhere, and he says, basically, he rocked up. I don't know how it come about, but he rocked up to training with a dress on. So you can imagine rocking up with a dress on, and back in that day too, like I don't know how it might be a bit of a joke now, but I don't know how, that one would come across. So, probably was a bit of a character, but the person might have been on the terps, I don't know, the night before, but, and they thought this is a great joke, but the way Reg handled that was said, oh, well, you got the dress, mate. Well, that's okay. You can wear it while you're training. So we had to train the whole training with the dress on, and I think Bob might have said, "Well, I never did it again," something like that. But he had a lot of he spoke very highly of Reg, so there was no he didn't have any it was all good, and he said what was Reg's strengths, and he said, well, he knew how to manage people. He said that's what he basically said. So
as you had said earlier, I saw him on a YouTube clip where Bob Davis, when they asked him about who the greatest player was on the 20th century team, and he said without hesitation it was Reg Hickey, and the commentators were challenging him on that and saying, well, it wasn't Gary Ablett Sr., and he explained why he felt that it should be Hickey rather than Ablett.
I looked at it too, and I've gone through it, and when you do put all the accolades up, and Reg was this, Reg was that, Reg was that, Gary Ablett Sr. became a full forward after, playing a lot on the wing. I think the story was actually off Bob Davis. I heard at training that they decided to put him, Malcolm Blight was the coach, basically, and so his reflexes were that good. We're going to put him down full forward. Malcolm Blight was a full forward in his day. It worked, and he kicked, and it was the year for hundreds of goals kicked, so he eclipsed. So as an individual, there's no doubt Gary Ablett Sr., spectacular. He'd win hands down. There'd be very few that could eclipse him. But as far as, a player, I suppose, so it's two separate questions. And I think really, too, when you start comparing things, it's very, very hard. You're always going to have different things.
Right.
It's just the way things are. But there's no doubt, as far as a spectacular player, Gary Ablett Sr., like you watch footage of him now, he's amazing to watch.
Oh, he's absolutely, amazing is the right word to use. I've seen several videos of him, and he
looks good, and
he's dynamic.
He played wing and couldn't get a game at Hawthorn, and there were brothers involved, and they were a bit wild, those brothers. And one used to win the foot race every grand final. I think it was Jeff, win the 100-metre sprint all the time. And, for a bloke that couldn't get a game at Hawthorn, our old mates Hawthorn, our old enemies, he didn't do too bad at all, did he? So, yeah, and we got little Junior there, like little Gary Junior there. So, not a lot.
I hadn't researched him that much. I did not even realize that he had been with Hawthorn before. So that tells you how new I am to the game.
Boys, and they were all sort of from the area they were that, just the way they were, and they might not have been disciplined or not. I don't know what really the story is with Hawthorn, because Hawthorn always been a pretty disciplined club. But yeah, he it's interesting, the talent though of that bloke, and of course of young Gary Jr. is amazing. Of course, as we all get to see and witness, and still watching young Gary now. I mean, where he's at is quite. The family's amazing. I mean, yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think definitely. Just something to share with you.
And this might be his final season, possibly.
This is not when he was going to, not in the latter part, or when he'd played there and he'd played really well, and then he got hit that many times. They kept dumping him. His shoulder got hurt that much. He was unbelievable when he was playing. He was unbelievable to watch as a captain. He's never been captain before, but I actually asked him, jumped on his account and said, come home. I just felt like saying it. And when I left that, I said, I wonder how that would have affected him. And I said to him, I just felt like doing it. But it was a stage when Geelong, I'd offered him another contract because they knew Geelong were ready. He wanted to come home, but they didn't want him. Sons still wanting to stay, and they knew that. And I think that was half the problem. Plus, I think he wanted to come home too. But so I just felt like saying it. There was and we took a lot to get him back. He didn't just come home like that. So I just felt like saying it. So I sent a thing to him just to say, mate, come home where you belong. So and it sort of meant a lot. I felt right in the gut. So,
ladies and gentlemen, this is the first of our 2 episodes with our interview with Chris Hickey, the second cousin of Cats legend Reg Hickey. Next week, we'll talk about some of the current players, and we'll touch on where we think they're going to be and what they're going to be doing in the 2020 season, which is just around the corner. I got to tell you, I have truly enjoyed talking to Chris. I plan on keeping in touch with him on social media. He's got a lot of great stories. I hope you have enjoyed these as well. If you'd like to reach out to me, you can reach me at Twitter on yank_on. You can email me at ayankonthefooty@gmail.com. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram at A Yank on the Footy. And you can find my podcast on Apple, on Spotify, I believe on Stitcher now as well as on the Podbean app. Again, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot thank you enough for listening and taking time out of your busy schedule. I have to tell you, while this is certainly not the most professional sounding podcast out there, I'm having a heck of a lot of fun doing it. I'm learning a lot about the game, and I hope that you're enjoying my journey. Very soon we're going to be hearing from some people here in the United States who are very much involved in the USAFL, people who are trying to bring the game to the United States to get interest in the game. They've had a great deal of success. We have teams all over the United States, and we're going to talk to them about some relief efforts that they have going with the terrible bushfires that are going on in Australia. Absolutely horrible. Again, I would like to remind you that this episode is dedicated to my friend Travis Milestone. Travis, good to talk to you this evening and catch up with you a little bit online. Glad to see that you're getting settled a little bit. I hope that things continue to look up for you. Again, nothing but best thoughts for you as you and your family go towards building your new lives. I want to ensure that I thank Joseph McDade for his music that I'm using as my intro and my outro music. Mr. McDade creates some fantastic music, and I'm using two of his pieces, one called Backplate and the other one called Elevation. You could find those pieces and many others at josephmcdade.com/music. That's josephmcdade.com/music. Mr. McDade, thanks again for your hard work and your wonderful musical pieces. Again, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day to give me a listen. And I truly hope that you'll come back again as I continue my journey to learn as much as I can about this beautiful and wonderful game. Because, while many of us are fans of our teams, deep down, we're fans of a game that we all love, and that's the game of footy. Again, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for listening, and I ask that you share this podcast with your footy friends, and may your dribble kick never hit the post. I'll catch you later. This has been Episode 3 of A Yank on the Footy. Don't forget, you can reach me at yank_on or by email at ayankonthefooty@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram and on Facebook at A Yank on the Footy. You can also find information about the podcast on Instagram and on Facebook at A Yank on the Footy. And don't forget, this podcast is available on the Podbean app, where you can leave comments and I'll respond, as well as finding it on Spotify, on Apple, on the Google Podcast, on Stitcher, and soon to be on Pandora and iHeart. I hope you've enjoyed Episode 3 and come back next week for the second half of my interview with Chris Hickey. If you would be so kind, I would love it if you would leave me a review on Podbean or on the Apple Podcast site or on whatever podcast player that you are using. It really helps me out and lets me know what I could be doing better. I would truly appreciate it.